but welcome to our CoderPad demo day, preventing and detecting cheating in your recruitment process. We're super excited, and there's a lot of meat that we will be covering today. But in the meantime, before I even go through anything, I'd love to do some housekeeping. So if we want to just go to the next slide. Perfect. So, like I said, before we get started, we have Catherine in the background. She's available in the chat to answer or help us direct any questions. Number two, this meeting is in fact being recorded. We might want to double check that, Catherine, if you don't. Oh, it is. Perfect. This meeting is being recorded, and you will get a recording after the webinar. All the questions can be submitted in the chat or in the QA tab. And then otherwise, our agenda for the day is this introduction. We'll meet the panelists. We'll dive into the demo. We'll do a live Q&A and a quick poll. And then we will be on our merry way. And any other information, I will follow up via email. Cool. If we want to just throw that poll on the slide, or on the webinar, we can go ahead and get that started. We're just gonna ask, how cheat resistant is your tech hiring process right now? Are you super comfortable? Very cheat resistant? Maybe you don't know when you haven't thought about it. Go ahead and indicate that. And we can go from there. We'll tailor the demo towards that. Cool. All right, we'll give it another couple more seconds, and then Catherine, if you want to share those results, that would be awesome. Cool. So it's looking like a couple people said they're somewhat cheat resistant, which means there is a lot of area to learn. So without further ado, let's get started. Awesome. I'm Caroline Matz. I'm part of the marketing team. I will be your moderator for the day. And then over here to my right is Frank, and he's the VP of Product. And we are also joined by Nathan Sutter, who is the VP of Engineering. Frank, I always butcher your last name. That's why I avoided it. Frank Halbin. So this is our
Ah,
team today. Did I say it wrong?
no, you got it.
Perfect. So this is our team today. We will jump right into it. Cool. Frank, do you want to take it away here? We've talked about it internally. Is AI cheating? Maybe not, but using these tools are. Do you want to dive in?
Yeah, so I think for those of us who are familiar with Reddit, the good and the bad of Reddit, we noticed this making its rounds just a few days ago, where I think we can. I'm not going to read the full thing to you, but you can see Interview Coder. So one of these tools is a complete scam and a total waste of money. And I think, as we all know, the internet tends to have a lot of exaggeration, hyperbole, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. But I thought it was interesting in that a couple things that you can see from the first post on the upper section. Somebody was using Interview Coder on CoderPad with one of our customers, LinkedIn, and so you can see it. It says, tried using it in an actual interview on CoderPad with LinkedIn today. As soon as I tried using it, the interview goes, buddy, are you serious right now? And effectively ended the interview. And so we just thought this was a little bit both funny, perhaps, but also quite topical considering this webinar and obviously just everything that we're talking about nowadays. And I think what we wanted to express here and highlight is that there are different ways that we can talk through here on the call, and we'll walk through both of our products and different features, but it is this in summation, the whole process as it fits together that allows you to kind of catch these tools and these cheaters. You'll see the one down below where it says, I am embarrassed TF out of myself. If you have a technical manager and can't explain in depth each line of your solution, you will get exposed in minutes. And again, this is not something we wrote. This is something that candidates and people who are interviewing are writing about. Of this is the reality of some of these tools, and often that then dovetails into our advice for you all, which we'll walk through again. But how are you training your interviewers, and are you putting a technical manager on there who is asking in depth for you somebody to explain your solution and so on? Again, just sharing this as a little bit. If you want to learn more, well, stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So it's clear cheating does happen. It's clear that there's multiple tools that people use to cheat. So what we're going to go over today is preventing and detecting cheating. We want you to be able to hire with confidence, and we want to make sure that you're hiring fairly and accurately, and that every time you screen, you can truly reflect each candidate's true abilities. So if we just want to go to the next slide. Awesome. Not only are we going to be covering features, we want to highlight that quality of questions matter. So asking true questions that you want to know the answer to, not asking generic leak code. I'm sure you've seen it all over our LinkedIn. We're trying to kind of eliminate that generic BS leak code. So without, or excuse my French, but when we ask shitty questions, we get shitty answers, and then we get shitty signal, which means we don't know if who we're hiring is the skills that has the skills that we're looking for. So I think that's important to highlight, and I'm sure that our panelists will speak a little bit more on that, but quality of questions matters, and so do the features that your hiring tool has. Cool. Like I said, we'll be covering some of those features. A few of them are disabling or highlighting copy and paste, test randomization, proctoring, code similarity check, IP tracking. This is another thing that, like Frank had mentioned earlier, CoderPad immediately caught somebody cheating, and then that interview was ended. Hey, what are you doing, buddy? Like, I'm watching you cheat real time. So no. So I will let you gentlemen hop into the nitty-gritty of it. And if you want to just go ahead and share your screen, we're gonna dive into screen.
Yeah, so just as to bring back up the shitty questions means shitty answers, which means shitty signal. The entire reason y'all are doing interviews is to have as close to a, for screen more top of funnel, but as close to a picture of what this person is going to be like working on the job with you as possible. If you ask toy questions, you're going to get answers that have been memorized, answers that have potentially been pulled from the internet, and your signal is going to be really bad. So I think the thing that we encourage everyone to do is make sure you ask relevant, realistic questions of candidates. They're as realistic to your on the job challenges that you have on a day-to-day basis. It'll get you the best signal possible. But candidates are still going to cheat. And I think the thing that we're going to show y'all here is some of the things that we do in CoderPad screen to show you some of the stuff that we would consider potentially something that you'd want to take a look at and make a determination on your own whether a candidate has been cheating or not. That being said, before I go into the demo, it's extraordinarily important for you to set expectations with the candidate as quickly as possible. First touch if you can. And those expectations as far as it comes to cheating is what is okay as far as what they can do in an interview. Can they use an external IDE? Do you want them to be using an LLM or not? Do you want them to Google things while they're either doing their screen or their live interview? So just being as clear as possible with the candidates as quickly as you can will, one, set them at ease, give them a good experience, and two, it'll make sure that if they do these things, it'll be clear to them that it's something that you didn't want happening and that they would be disqualified for. So with that in mind, in communication, I am in a quick test that I set up in CoderPad screen. One of the things you can do to set these expectations really quickly in settings is you basically have communication versions you can send out. So you can literally customize your email you send out to every candidate you send a test, and you can set up all of these expectations really, really clearly in the settings here. So we would absolutely encourage you to do that. Outside of that, so in the individual questions, again, this is in CoderPad screen. This is just a handful of questions that I've set up. You can set a couple of different things. Let me jump back into settings for a minute. So you can set either a timer for a question or a global timer. So you can have, hey, I want each individual question to be n number of minutes, or I want them to be customized per question, or I want it to be rather open-ended and say, like, I want a candidate to complete this test in 60 minutes, for example. Some of the other settings you can set are, this is all about test integrity, what we're talking about today. If you want unusual activity alerts, always should keep this on. This will give you some indication as to whether we consider strange things have gone on during the interview. I'll show you some examples of this in a minute. If you want to copy and paste, or block copy and paste, you can turn this on and off. So if you turn this off, candidates cannot copy and paste text into the environment, which if you've set expectations around, like, hey, please do not Google anything and copy and paste anything in, you can turn this on to disallow them for doing that. Follow-up questions, which I'll show you an example of in a minute. So in instances where we see a candidate doing something unusual, like completing a question extraordinarily quickly, like if you had a question that was going to take them 15 minutes and they completed it in 15 seconds, we can generate a question for you on the fly that actually ask the candidates to elaborate a little bit on how they solved the problem. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. These are all generated in real time by ChatGPT, which is super helpful. It's part of one of our add-ons. Again, I'll show you an example of this in a minute. You can also turn on webcam proctoring. So what this is it basically takes the candidate's webcam during the assessment, and it takes pictures of them every couple of seconds, and then it'll highlight things that we consider unusual that we've captured on the webcam. I'll show you an example of this in a second, but some examples are if the candidate left the view of the webcam, if we saw more than one person during the interview, and some stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Nathan, I hate to interrupt. A question just came in from an anonymous attendee, but they were curious, do we also test for fully generated deepfaked candidates or AI avatars? Or is the fraud/cheating not as far advanced yet?
Deepfaked candidates, no. I think there's a couple of videos circulating around the internet of a session in a court where one of the council members was actually one of the lawyers was actually a deep fake lawyer, and it was sort of hard to tell. So I think we haven't necessarily looked into that, but I think if a candidate did that, I would expect that a lot of the unusual activity alerts would be fired off pretty quickly. So if somebody is hired a robot to do their interview, they'd probably answer the questions really, really quickly. They would copy and paste things in. And you would see those in the unusual activity alerts. But no, we don't have anything that is like, hey, this person is deep faked, for example. It's a good question.
Great question, and I think that's just a less common way of cheating that we're seeing. I don't want to say it doesn't happen, but I think the unusual activity, copy and pasting, using AI, without permission to, is a little bit more common right now than the deep fakes.
Yeah, totally. But who knows? Could become popular in the next couple of years.
Evolving.
Yeah. I mean, people hire other people to take their assessments for them. So let's just pretend, a company comes along like or a solution comes along like the one Frank was talking about, where it's like, hey, hire a robot to do your interview for you. Stranger things have happened.
Thank you for answering the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so again, webcam proctoring is about capturing their webcam and seeing if anything weird happened here. AI analysis is literally, we will take those screenshots we've taken, feed that into some of our AI, and then tell you if anything strange has happened or we've seen anything strange happening. I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. And then full screen mode, it's also a good way if you don't want a candidate to be working outside of the environment at all and you want them locked into the IDE and locked into the assessment, you can turn this on as well. So these are all the settings. Again, this is just in the general settings that you can configure these on a per test basis. And these are all the things that CoderPad screen has to sort of nudge you in the right direction as far as whether a candidate has done anything weird that you would consider cheating. Okay, so let's go into some of these. So this is just a test I set up for myself to take. I did horribly. Please don't judge me because of it. So this is a candidate view. So this will have as many candidates as you've sent this test out to. So I've just set it up for one. If you had 100 here, there would be 100. And you can see there is a little red exclamation point that unusual activity was detected or one or more exercises. Let's go see what that's all about. Before we do that, clicking each candidate gives you some metrics on scoring. Not going to go into that too much. As far as cheating is concerned, one thing that we have seen on the platform, the example I gave of, oh, hey, I hired somebody in New York to take this test for me. What you would see here is, yeah, I logged in Valencia and started the test in Valencia, but it was opened and then completed in New York. And so we do a little bit of IP tracking there to make sure that a candidate didn't open it on the West Coast and complete it 15 minutes later on the East Coast. We see this more often than I would like to admit, but it makes it extraordinarily clear here about the sort of the candidate paper trail as far as that's concerned. Okay, let's jump into the detailed report and look at some of the unusual activity. So I clicked View Detailed Report. This literally gives you it shows you all of the questions the candidate was asked, how they performed on those questions, and it also gives you literally what they were doing over time, so you can scrub through this, and it gives you events here. So let's go down to one of these that was interesting. So I answered this really quickly. So what I did here was I literally had ChatGPT on the side. I took a screenshot of the question. I fed it into ChatGPT and told it to, hey, answer this question for me. And then what I did was, so I'm in and out of the environment a lot. So I'm outside of the environment most of the time. So there's no code happening here. And then I pasted a whole bunch. It's not a ton, but I pasted a bunch of code, and then I removed it and I pasted it again. And then I run the code, and then I just did a bunch of, so you can see code was pasted from an external source here. Because of that, we generated a follow-up question from ChatGPT, and it said, in your implementation of this, blah, 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 you've done a bunch of stuff. Can you explain why? And then I just answered, I have no idea, because I copied and pasted it from ChatGPT. That's not an honest answer you would get from a candidate. But if they literally just struggled through this and then also couldn't expand upon how they solved the problem, it's a pretty good signal for y'all. And these are all generated on the fly. You don't have to set these up. If you have the feature enabled on your account, it will generate these automatically when unusual activity has been noted in an exercise. So it's pretty handy. So it gives you a little bit of safeguards as far as other than just seeing that time was spent outside the environment, or the solution was solved pretty quickly. Let's see what else here. I did really poorly on all of this because I was just blindly clicking through. I think some of the other things that we do as far as unusual activity is concerned is we do a code similarity check across all of the code that has been submitted on CoderPad's screen of all time. So if a candidate copies and pastes something that is identical to what we've seen on the platform, we will surface that here for you. In the same way, it'll be unusual activity. Duplicate code has been identified here. That's either a signal that they used an LLM to generate it, they went to Stack Overflow to take a solution and copied and pasted it in, or they're sharing something with another candidate, which is pretty cool. And then all the other ones we've already covered, which is the amount of time we spent outside the environment. And I think that is pretty much it there. Yeah.
Ethan, we have a couple of questions that are coming in
Oh,
through
cool.
chat. So the first is, do you detect Chrome extensions? So the extension might bypass that cut and paste detection?
So we have a couple of different things. So let me start with what we don't do. What we don't do is, like in the unusual activity report, we don't say, hey, this candidate had an extension that is bypassing copy and paste, for example. We don't do that. What we are looking into is the example of the software that Frank demoed a little bit earlier. We do have some mitigation as far as Chrome extensions is concerned. It's on the back end. But but there's most of these extensions are pretty clever as far as how they actually bypass things like this. So I would say so we're working on a couple of things internally to bypass the ones that are a little bit more aggressive, like the one Frank was talking about. But a lot of the unusual activity alerts will be a good proxy for somebody using a Chrome extension, for example. And if you're worried about copy and paste, right, and somebody has an extension to bypass that, for example, it'll be highlighted here. So it'll be pretty clear that the candidate copied and pasted
Awesome.
code.
There's a second question, Nathan, and it came in about interview. I know we're going to be covering interview live, but are some of these same settings available in the interview?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Frank will go through all of those. There are some similar settings that you can see in the live interview product. Yeah.
Perfect. So we will get this question answered live, and you will be able to take a peek into the product.
Yep. Totally. The last thing that I want to cover, and then we will get into the interview stuff, is the webcam proctoring. So for this one, I had webcam proctoring turned on. It is in the proctoring tab. So if you have the sort of the AI feature enabled, the weird events that happen during the proctoring session will be highlighted here. So you can see that my face was absent for 21 seconds. So it'll show you all of my time I spent, and then, oh wait, I disappeared. If a second person shows up on screen, there's a couple of other instances we have. It'll give you an example of that. So it'll literally show you the images that were taken during the assessment, which is pretty cool. So clearly I panicked on a question and I had to go ask my son how to solve something here. But if you have that enabled, it is a really, really cool feature that we've seen a lot of adoption from customers and a lot of really, really good feedback. So that is all of screen. I'm going to stop sharing and then we can shift to interview.
All right. Please speak up if you can't see my screen. So yes, to go back to that core question, do we have some of the same features? I wouldn't say we have precisely the same features. We have a heavy overlap of features, but then also certain features that, in addition to what you saw, that actually befit the live interview use case. Because of course, these products are used in different ways. One is a more asynchronous setting. This here, of course, is our interview product, which is used for live interviews. And so the first place, and I'll walk through some slides, just give you an overview and then hop into the product to see how this all comes together. So I guess some advice that we give to you all is, yes, turn on the features that we do have. And so what we see on the screen is the settings toggles that we have within your organization settings, again, to be able to track those copy paste events, left ID events. And then I also wanted to share a few stats. And so over the past 100,000 interviews, so the past few weeks, we do see quite a lot of volume. 50% of pads had left pad events and 20% of pads had external paste events. Now, it's important to remember not all of these could be indications of bad behavior. That you may have left pad or have authorization to have left the pad. But the point is, without actually turning on these features and looking at these features on, then you would not actually know that this is going on. Second, I guess where that carries forward is we also surface that within our playback. And so we'll be hopping into a pad, but within our summary, we do summarize the suspicious behavior. We highlight these actions within our keystroke timeline to allow you, after the fact, to be able to audit and also have a record of this that you can take away and understand what happens within your interviews. Other aspects of improving prevention and detection, I guess that honestly, a lot of customers don't typically think about. So back, pre-COVID or, potentially even now where you might be interviewing some people live in a office, a lot of recruiting coordinators would do this, escort candidates to the conference room or to the meeting room. And so they would go meet you in the lobby, escort you to the conference room, and after your interview was done, they'd escort you to the next conference room or escort you out. And so while these couple features aren't quote unquote monitoring features, they do help provide the right experience. And so again, we recommend that you turn these on. We have a waiting room, which will prevent candidates from entering a pad that you may have set up and seeing questions beforehand. And we also have an ability to end pads right within for the user to do that. But then also we have an auto ending feature to end these in mass so that these live links and live pads aren't out there for somebody to come back at a later date and extract information or share it. And so again, these are minor tweaks and nudges that you can add to your experience. Again, we advise that you turn these on. Along with that, we have additional features that, again, you might not think of in terms of pure monitoring or cheating, but we have transcription for in-pad calls, and we have summaries, much in the way that I think is common practice nowadays for whether it's a Zoom call or a sales gong call or some of these other products that are out there. We have an AI note taker to really allow your live interviewer to pay full attention to the candidate, to be able to understand and see any nuance, but then also in paying full attention and having 100% of their brain occupied with the interview, they can start to dive in deeper. We go back to that Reddit post where somebody was complaining about, or somebody said he or she embarrassed themselves by having to explain. That's where follow-up questions would come into play. And that's where diving in deeper as an interviewer, both training the interviewer and then having them dive deeper, will allow that to happen. And we'll show that all here in a second. Also, pairing with this concept of leaving the IDE. I think if you ask the root question, why is somebody leaving the IDE? They may make an excuse, hey, I have to go look this up, and you grant them, and you don't know what they're actually doing. Or maybe there is no excuse, but either way, what we do encourage a lot of our customers to do is to turn on the AI assist. That actually removes that excuse to have to leave the IDE, and both it provides a more realistic setting where these are the tools that you're using day to day, but also it is fully monitored. We do expose and share and make it transparent what a candidate is asking the AI assist for, and we have this whole pathway and artifact in our playback of what happened, what they were prompting and what they were querying. I think I'd be remiss without covering these as well. Setting proper expectations for candidates. We have found both in our async setting and within live interviews, just simply saying what is allowed, what is not allowed, and that having a warning to candidates that they are being monitored does set the right tone and expectation for candidates, and does limit their jumping around or trying to do have suspicious activity that you might find untoward. And training interviewers, I think, is something we don't talk about enough. Training them to dive in deeper, ask these follow-up questions. That is how you surface things, where you expose where a candidate actually doesn't know what they're talking about, or whether they just got this from an AI bot. Wrapping all of this together, I think we also ask you to shift away from lead code questions towards our project environment. Asking realistic, relevant questions gives you the time and space to be able to dive in deeper, and take the interview forward where you are able to expose their thinking. But also, these are inherently much harder to cheat against. There is no one shot, one right answer where you can just copy paste and AI will spit out the right code. That is how AI can answer lead code in one shot. And so if you're still asking lead code questions, we definitely advise you to shy away from that. So putting this all into practice, Nathan, I'm going to ask you to join me in this pad as a candidate. You can see here at the top of the screen, the waiting room is enabled, and so we'll see that pop up in a sec. I'm going to not transcribe this call, so continue without transcription. Nathan, I think you joined as a interviewer. I'm going to ask that you join as a candidate, please.
Yep. Sorry.
So while you're joining, I guess to tie in a couple of the other things that we're talking about, realism. So what you can see is this is not a lead code question. What we give you the ability to ask is a very real, relevant question, and go through a problem-solving experience together as you would on the job. Nathan candidate has joined the waiting room. I'm going to admit Nathan. in here. And along with that, what we can see here on the right, this is a question for a real estate company for a front-end developer. And so somebody who would be editing their tooling, their web page, their application. And you can see that it is a full application. And so this is as real as it gets. We have all the resident capabilities. You can see multiple files, you can install npm install Lodash. And I guess I'm not asking you to necessarily read through the code or understand any of that, but the point that I'm trying to make is this is not a service level math question. This does let you go ahead and ask realistic questions. And so within this question, you can see we have set it up so that it has multi-part instructions, in part because this is how we find the interviews are best set up, where you start with something simple and build upon it. And then quite honestly, there's also little nudges along the way that prevent this from being solved by AI. AI can literally not answer this question if it can't see the instructions. And so that's maybe a very surface level thing, but again, it's all of these nudges that add up to the proper experience. The other thing you can see within this more realistic question, again, it's written as a product manager would write a spec for a developer, is that a lot of this question asks the candidate to actually use AI to help with the initial brainstorming and optimization strategies. And so I will say that our most forward-leaning customers actually, aren't thinking about how to prevent AI. They're asking candidates to use AI and testing their ability to use AI. And again, here we have the AI assist where we would be able to see candidate Nathan being able to type in any help here, and we would have this full record again in playback. So again, what we're covering here is using realistic questions, actually not just trying to fight AI, but actually incorporating it into the interview process and using it and measuring their ability to use AI features to accelerate their interviews. Now, that's all in lead up to, again, those very monitoring focused features, which we do have here. And so I guess, Nathan, if you don't mind, would you mind, just try, I guess, here in the README file, whether it's typing something in or copying, pasting from somewhere else, as well as, trying to leave the pad. And so I can see candidate Nathan or Nathan candidate has left the pad.
So
5 seconds. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to generate some code and then copy and paste it in. So I'm going to copy and paste something from an external source in just a second. Give me a moment. So this is just text, but I copy and pasted some stuff in there.
Right. And we can see you leaving and coming back and triggering these alerts that show up in the lower right. And so those are the alerts that we talk about in terms of real-time feedback and understanding what the candidate is doing, what they're looking at, and making sure that this is a fully monitored environment. I will share that we do expose that to the candidate as our way of being honestly transparent with them, but also it is a nice nudge. Hey, you are being monitored, you are being watched. So, hey, knock it off. Now, how this then shows up after the interview is done is that we have our full keystroke by keystroke playback, which then shows these events. This was a demo pad that Ken from our team was doing earlier, and so you could see that the candidate in this case clicked away for a number of different time periods and had an external paste event. And as I was highlighting within the pad summary, we do summarize all of that in a nice structured format of here, 7 left pad events, total of 2 minutes, while, one paste of 1,400 characters. And there's other, noteworthy things in terms of waiting room and things that you might want to inform your process. But this being the topic of suspicious behavior, you can see that we highlight that front and center for you after the fact and make it, fully transparent of when this happened so you can trace all of that. And then beyond that, with our transcription feature that allows you, the interviewer, to pay full attention to the candidate for all the good and bad, and to dive in deeper. We are also taking that transcript and taking the code changes, and we're feeding all that in for a nice summary, which is clickable, taking you to the different parts of the code that where this happened. But all of this helps you hopefully synthesize what happened and understand what happened within an interview, even if you're not there. And for the interviewer, it's our quick way of making it easy for them to submit feedback on everything that happened within the pad. And so hopefully you see how all of these features come together to provide a great candidate experience, but then ultimately also provide you with enough understanding of everything that happened within the confines of the interview.
Frank,
Okay.
quick question. When
Yeah.
we're talking about those, generated notes, that's not just as cheating. That's pointing out any large changes or notable changes made. So I mean, like in general, even if somebody just blew that interview out of the water, no cheating, you still have those notes
Yeah,
available.
yeah. Thank you. Those aren't just related to cheating, but it is get the full context of everything there. And again, our goal is to arm you with enough knowledge of, basically what is everything that happened here.
Yeah.
And hopefully it comes, you can see how it is this trade-off of we do want a monitored environment, we want a realistic environment, as Nathan said at the top, and providing the right signal. But then we also want to, give you the full context and understanding of what happened within that interview.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question. And there is no dumb question, so you don't need to say dumb question. How do we know if someone is joining as an interviewer versus a candidate? Do you mind? It will say candidate and will say interviewer, correct?
Yeah, and so we do know that in that interviewers log in, and so we can see that you've logged in, and we know who you are, and ultimately candidates, might have a free account or something like that, but they're not part of your organization, so that's how we understand that.
Awesome. Perfect. That is really helpful. Thank you for diving in. We're way ahead of schedule, so I think we could probably jump into, let's get a poll going and then let's jump into the live Q&A. Does that sound good to everybody? Oh, actually, we have one more. We'll do our poll and then we'll answer some of those live questions. So, Catherine, if on the back end you don't mind deploying a poll. Awesome. With all that information we just went through, I would love to make sure that everybody has what they need to stop cheating. So if you just want to indicate, yes, you can reach out. We'd love to get something scheduled. We can dive even deeper for your own instance. No, you love your process without CoderPad, or maybe you're a current customer, but you still want resources. Go ahead and indicate that, and I can send you what's needed. So we'll keep that up for a couple minutes. Well, a minute and 10 seconds, couple minutes. That's crazy. Awesome. We'll give it another second or two. Give it another few seconds, and then Catherine, I can have you close that. Perfect. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. We will jump into the live Q&A. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. One question that's just simply in the chat right now is, do you have any guidance on writing good interview questions that are project-based?
Yeah, I can take this one. So starting with the type of signal that you want to get, I mentioned at the top, you want to get the ideal interview is one where you get as close to possible as a pair programming exercise, assuming we're talking about a bottom of funnel live interview. You want to get as close to a pair programming exercise with this person embedded in the team that they are, interviewing for. So how do you get something like that? How I've done this in the past is you typically take something either super relevant to the tech stack you're working on or super relevant to the problem space that you're in. So if you're an autonomous driving company, you make it an autonomous driving problem. If you're a Node plus Java shop, make it a Node plus Java question. If you're a React shop, make it a React question. And you want your questions to be as relevant as possible. And some customers are comfortable with this, some are not. What I typically have done in the past is take bits and pieces of your code and then make a interview question around those. So what does this look like? It's I have run interviews where it's been like, hey, I'm gonna pull some code that we have live in production today, change it a little bit, anonymize it a little bit, but break it in some way, shape, and form, and make the exercise about like, hey, what's broken here? How do we fix this? And make it as relevant as possible. You want to give them as close to a peek into the problems they would be solving on the job as possible. And where I would start is literally, what are the problems that this team is running into today, and what kind of problems would this person be solving on the job? And full disclosure, that's a lot harder and involves a lot more time and preparation than just pulling a question out of LeetCode and asking them to solve that. And that's primarily why people ask simple toy questions, is because it's very easy to do. The problem is the signal sucks in comparison. You do not get the signal. You do not get that. What would it be like to actually work with this person signal, which is what you want. So I would start with what problems is this team solving today, and what would this person in this role be solving for us? Take some inspiration from code that exists today with your hiring managers and go from there.
Awesome.
Frank, do you have anything else to?
Yeah, I guess to piggyback off of that, you covered, certainly, Nathan, thank you, to make it realistic by using the technology that you're certainly using at work and having it reflect that, and making it relevant to your business and choosing actual problems. I think a couple ways to maybe scope this down that we also talk with customers about are, one, we practice this internally, by the way, is for your team, have them ask them to have a running log of different problems that they run into. And as they notice them, to just jot it down. It's an easy way to be in the moment. And now then over time, you'll have a running list of, oh, these could be interview questions, and you can kind of pull from that. And so this is something we do in practice, and it's kind of a light way to make sure that our questions are always fresh. The second is in trying to understand how to provide the right context and what is too complicated and so on. We often say, try and look at or use a problem that you would give somebody in their first week on the job. And that's a good way of just this, certainly you have people joining all the time and you're not giving them nonsense work. You're giving them real problems. And so that allows you to kind of strip it down to its core of being relevant, being useful, things that you're familiar with, give them an understanding of the problems you're working on. And quite honestly, the problem they will be working on should they get hired in that first week. And it's a good viewpoint to kind of approach in writing a good interview questions that are project based.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. There's another question. Data structures and algorithms do have value. Do the project questions have DSA thinking required in their solutions?
It depends. So I would say you do not want to run an interview that is only about data structures and algorithms unless you're hiring a junior candidate. I mean, mostly because that's all a junior candidate knows, right? Unless they have extensive internship background, which some candidates do, which is awesome. All they know is data structures and algorithms. So junior candidates, it's totally fine. You want obviously you want to make them relevant to the problems they'd be solving on the job, like Frank said. But yeah, I mean, I would expect that most problems that you're going to be asking this person to solve on the job are going to, in some way, shape, or form, have, algorithmic components and have data structure components. And I would expect those to be in the problems they would be solving on a day-to-day basis. And if you start with, what would they be solving week one, there should be some data structures and algorithms questions in that. But I've hired probably thousands of engineers at this point. I've never run an interview for a non-junior candidate that was just data structures and algorithms. And the The answer to why is because that doesn't give you a good signal by itself. If you can't solve relevant problems that are not just data structures and algorithms, then I don't think they'd be a good fit on the team. But again, for junior candidates, it's all you have. It's all the signal that you have to go off. So it's much more appropriate.
I mean, I'll say even for junior candidates, and Nathan, you can, argue with me if you think otherwise. I think we are finding that curriculum is pushing towards more realistic, project-based experience. I mean, if you look at where we started, the Interview Coder app was built by a sophomore at university, and so I think it's to say that they're only coming in. I think with DSA type knowledge. I think inherently a lot of curriculum is moving towards more realism. That being said, I think even within, as you point out, data structured questions, for the wide gamut, to echo what you said, Nathan. I was on with a customer yesterday who did talk about the emphasis in understanding, because they're a very technical, they're one of the leading edge AI companies, understanding these types of concepts, but it was in the context of building an API endpoint. And so I guess ultimately the question was about building an endpoint, extending an endpoint, and then involve some of these concepts, but it wasn't just, to your point, that narrow use case.
Yeah, and I agree. Like when I was in school, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, we had one class that was focused on, like, scare quotes, software engineering class, right? Where you worked in teams and you solved more realistic problems. And I think at university, it's the curriculum is definitely trending. There are fundamental data structures courses that people take, but they are, Frank, you're absolutely right. They are trending more towards like what are real life technology problems that people are solving. And then outside of that, like over the last 20 years, we've seen a shift from, a lot of the people that are coming into the job market aren't coming in from a background that's just university, right? So it's either boot camp, self-taught, some combination of both. And those people are going to be more junior candidates, but they're going to have much more like technology focused problem solving skills, and not just like, hey, I took 10 algorithms classes for example. So that's certainly true. So to round that off, like, yes, some of the best signal you're going to get is from academic candidates with some data structures questions, but Frank's absolutely right. It is trending more towards like real world problem solving skills rather than just like how do you rebalance a red black tree, for example.
That's great to know. Thank you. There's another great question. I think this is especially an especially quality question, especially how many times can I say especially good question with what's on our roadmap this year. So Matt has asked, can multi-file project questions be created for CoderPad screen?
Frank, you want to take this? I will. I'm happy to. I was going to cede the floor. So right now we are very busy working on a bunch of different stuff. One of those things is so right now CoderPad screen and CoderPad interview have, as you've seen, some slightly different feature sets. One of the things that is different between screen and interview is you do not have project-based setup. By the end of the year, we are going to be the IDEs for both asynchronous interviews and synchronous interviews, which is now screen and interview, are going to be the same, and you're going to have the ability to do project-based questions top of funnel. So today, no. Very soon, yes.
I guess, more specifically, while we're fully consolidating everything to a T and wrapping up a nice bow by the end of the year, we will have projects within screen this summer. And so, sorry, Caroline, I forget who exactly mentioned that, but if you're interested in beta testing that, then let us know and we'll have that house of you in that before this summer.
Yeah, we can send a message to Matt. Thanks for the question, Matt. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on time. I don't see very many questions left, but I do want to, make sure everybody's well aware. If you have any questions, you can drop them now. We'll stay on for another minute or two. Otherwise, like I said, we will be sending a recording of the webinar. We can send some additional resources, and anybody on this call right now, we have made ourselves available, and that information will also be in the follow-up. So we're here if you need us. We're looking forward to connecting, and thank you so much for joining our webinar. Awesome.